Corruption and the perception of it has a big impact on gross domestic product. Since 2012, Australia has slid from 7th to 13th in global rankings on the Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. The Australia Institute has crunched the numbers and says that's worth about $72 billion to the country's bottom line. To explain this further, I'm joined by Rod Campbell. He's the Director of Research at the Australia Institute. He's joining us from our Canberra studios. Thanks for your time this afternoon, Rod. A University of Canberra study found in 2016 that only 5% of Australians trust government. Is that level of distrust why our ranking has slipped 5 places?
I think there's a range of reasons why the perception of corruption in Australia has increased since 2012. And we've seen a string of scandals relating to the Australian Wheat Board, the Eddie Obeid, Ian McDonald coal scandals. Even today we've seen Labor MP Michael Danby in the news for taxpayer-funded trips for personal use. So there's been a range of corruption and things that give the perception that Australia doesn't have quite its transparency and accountability ducks in a row. That's been coming for quite a while, and as you've said, since 2012 we've slipped several places and we've lost 6 important points on Transparency International's index.
Obviously, though, when you compare Australia to other countries in the world, thinking of places perhaps as Venezuela, Zimbabwe, corruption here clearly is very different to what those countries face.
Sure, so Australia's a very different place to those countries, but it's pretty well established internationally amongst economists, the relationship between corruption and economic performance. And it's not really surprising. If you're having to pay bribes, the costs of business increase. If there's a perception of corruption, people are less likely to invest. It results in capital and other resources not going to the most efficient place, but going to the best connected people. And so the idea that corruption and the perception of it has an economic cost isn't a new one. What we really need to be thinking about is what to do about it, and that's where ideas like a federal corruption watchdog or a federal ICAC can come in and perhaps start to address some of these issues.
How do you think they would best be placed to address those issues?
Well, we've seen Australia's point score in the Transparency International Index slip 6 points, and other economists have estimated that for every point you slip, you lose around $480 worth of GDP per capita. So exactly how big a difference having a federal ICAC would make is pretty difficult to predict. But it'd be a start where we've seen Australians losing confidence in our parliament, and polling has shown strong increases in support for a federal ICAC. Australia Institute polling has seen support go from 67% to 80% to 88% in the last couple of years. So, and exactly what the result of that would be is very hard to predict. But the idea that policies like this can help and have a positive economic impact is not a controversial one.
We have seen, I guess, somewhat the effect of those types of commissions on a state-by-state level as well then.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen huge public support for the New South Wales ICAC for reasons like it has a very broad definition of corruption, it has a very broad remit as to who it can look at, and really importantly, it conducts hearings in public. And that's what gives the public confidence that their decision makers and bureaucrats are actually being held to account. And that's why we think it'd be such a good idea and carry considerable economic benefit.
Rod Campbell, the Director of Research at Australia Institute, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Rachel.